If there was ever a time to reflect on the history of Metal Gear, it's now. We're most likely preparing to play the last Metal Gear game from Hideo Kojima, and although he wasn't personally responsible for some of the titles on this list, the man is synonymous with the series. The best parts of Metal Gear, the locations, the characters, the plot twists, the complicated story, and the near-perfect stealth, are all expertly demonstrated in these groundbreaking games. The question isn't if Metal Gear is one of the greatest franchises in video games. We want to know which is the best of the best. Set after the events of Snake Eater and Portable Ops, Peace Walker picks up with Big Boss and his newly formed mercenary group. Unlike previous games, Peace Walker is divided up into small, bite-sized missions that focus on quick bursts of gameplay. Missions and side ops can be tackled solo or with a friend, earning you rewards for your mother base and arsenal of weapons. Peace Walker snuck its way onto the list by shaking up the traditional Metal Gear formula. Control issues on the PSP and a necessity for grinding stops it from ascending higher in the ranks. But it's worth a playthrough to get up to speed on Phantom Pain, at the very least.
Oh yeah! Long live MFF!
How does an overpriced demo disc possibly belong on this list, not to mention outrank Peace Walker? Ground Zeroes, despite its brevity, achieves its own greatness. It might just be 45 minutes long, depending on which objectives you choose to focus on, but the tone is distinctly heavy, and each of your actions feels meaningful. On the other end, the varied non-canon missions turn the relatively small map into an enormous playground for do-anything espionage action. Until we play the Phantom Pain, this is the best-looking, best-controlling Metal Gear game to date, and that has to be worth something. Not to be confused with the NES version we got in the States in 1988, the very first Metal Gear was released for the MSX2. Not only does it crush the NES version in quality, it was unlike most games released in the late 80s, a stealth espionage adventure released in an era of over-the-top action. While the series evolved considerably over the years, many of the standard elements were there from the start, using various gadgets to get by enemy defenses, speaking over a radio to important contacts, long bouts of exposition, and taking on colorful bosses with names that should belong to pro wrestlers. Don't have an MSX2? The original Metal Gear is packaged with MGS3 Subsistence, and later, the HD edition in 2011. Americans were once again duped by inferior ports when we assumed Snake's Revenge on the NES was the true follow-up to the original Metal Gear. Kojima didn't return to the franchise for 3 years, but the wait was worth it. In MG2, Snake can crawl under objects, guards can move their heads and scan the environment with a 45-degree field of vision, and noises now prompt soldiers to seek out the source. The game was also the blueprint for the first Metal Gear Solid, as an alarming number of plot points were adapted or copied directly into the breakthrough game on the original PlayStation. Ghost Babel is a weird game. While it's not officially considered canon and Hideo Kojima's involvement was limited, it's set in an entirely alternate continuity 7 years after the events of the original Metal Gear. While lore enthusiasts may find this off-putting, it's a breath of fresh air not having to worry about story details and franchise connections. It also features incredibly unique boss fights, and the final showdown with Metal Gear is one of the best in the franchise. Instead of just shooting rockets at it, Snake has to trick it into stepping on landmines. Despite being limited by the Game Boy Color's lack of power, Ghost Babel has big ideas. Metal Gear Rising knows how completely out there Metal Gear can be and revels in that fact. The final boss battle takes place against a Colorado senator, one that happens to be pumped full of nanomachines. While Rising is well in tune with Kojima's specific brand of insanity, it's not afraid to chase after its own thing, which may be its most commendable aspect. It's a nearly flawless action game, the kind that only Platinum can make. Fights are blisteringly fast, requiring precision and dexterity. Most importantly, though, Rising is filled with unforgettable moments. You slice apart a Metal Gear Ray while metal music blares in the background, and this is only in the first 10 minutes. Rising proves that you can honor something and run wild with it at the same time.
All you want is power at any cost.
Jack, it's not power I want. What I wanted to take back from the Patriots are things like freedom, civil rights, opportunities.
If there's ever been an elaborate ruse in gaming, it's Metal Gear Solid 2. Right up until release, virtually everyone was excited to continue the story of the legendary soldier Solid Snake. Not only do you spend 85% of the game with the easy-to-hate Raiden, but the entire story is built around manipulation and deceit. Metal Gear Solid 2 is about how digital information is inherently untrustworthy, yet rather than just declare these statements, it goes out of its way to pull the wool over your eyes. Never has a game married its message with its structure so frustratingly well. Metal Gear Solid 2 also proves that Kojima has no intention of repeating himself, making sequels that defy rather than cater to expectations.
Who's there?
After multiple delays, enormous expectations, and being labeled by Hideo Kojima as the final Metal Gear game, Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots finally launched in 2008. The stealth and gameplay are further refined and expanded from previous entries thanks in part to Octo Camo, which remains the single best piece of equipment in the franchise. Guns of the Patriots also had the colossal task of wrapping up decades of lore, and though the hefty amount of cutscenes are contentious, the game is filled with emotional callbacks that can make grown men weep. Metal Gear Solid 4 is a game that does not compromise. The story demands dedication and patience for the ultimate payoff. At first, Metal Gear felt like some kind of strange spin-off. It refused to follow the events of MGS2 directly, removed the familiar cast of characters, and took place in a thick jungle. Today, the tale of Naked Snake, the man who would eventually become Big Boss, holds up as an essential cornerstone of the series. Not only is MGS3 important in terms of lore, but it presents a much wider space to explore than its predecessors. The atmosphere is so rich, you can practically feel the humidity. It introduces new fundamentals such as camouflage, and it boasts some of the best boss encounters in the series.
I've been waiting for you, Solid Snake. Now we'll see if the man can live up to the legend.
When Solid Snake deployed onto the PlayStation in 1998, it altered the course of history. The events of Shadow Moses became the archetype for all Metal Gear Solid games to follow, and rightfully so. In MGS1, stealth and action blend together in a way we didn't think was possible before, turning tactical espionage action into a true namesake. Iconic boss fights, unforgettable reveals, and a clash of unique characters across the battlefield, leading up to the fateful confrontation of the Twin Snakes atop the smoking ruins of Metal Gear Rex, make this a work of art that most other games can only hope to achieve.